welcome everybody to a Friday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. This is our Hot Route episode. We do every Friday with me, Coach Kevin Smith, and Pez from Pez's Picks, who is up in the mountains enjoying a mug of hot brew from a Jeffrey Lebowski mug I can see there. He's got the dude on his mug, and he's looking kind of dudeish. What's up, Pez? How are you?
Dude living up in the Green Mountains, Coach. Can't see the mountains today. I'm catching in the camera. We got some passing showers coming through. You see any lightning behind me, you holler it out to me. Let me get indoors there a little bit. But good living up here. It's good times. Mountain biking, mountain climbing, a little Kent Pond canoeing going on, and stand-up paddleboarding. A new invention. That's a good one. I think we stole from the Hawaiians.
Yeah, that looks awesome right now. I'm actually heading to the mountains later this week, or actually early next week, I should say, when I go out to Latrobe to cover Steelers training camp. We're going to do some whitewater rafting when we're out there, so I'm looking forward to that.
Stay in the boat, Coach. Stay in the boat.
I will try.
If you fall, the rule is you pick your feet up, which sounds kind of moronic, but you get your feet stuck in those rocks. That's when trouble comes. Pull those feet up, Coach.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to go head first. The last time we went whitewater rafting, we were in Austria, and we were in a river where the guide was like, "Oh, everybody dive in; it'll be nice." But it was river water from the Alps. I've never been in anything that cold in my entire life. I think it sucked about 4 years of life out of my lungs.
I don't trust those Austrians since World War II, Coach. I don't know. I think you were taking some bad advice there. A little vacation high. You got to keep your head straight in that vacation.
Oh man. I tell you what, invigorating is an understatement. But Pez, sad week here, man. I mean, in back-to-back days, we lost two of the icons of our youth. You and I are, we're Generation Xers. We're products of the 80s and 90s. And on back-to-back days, we lost Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan. And I'm going to ask you the question, which is the bigger icon of those two? But before we do, share with me, when you think of Ozzy and Hulk, share with me your kind of greatest memories.
Well, and lest we forget Theo Huxtable, Coach. Malcolm Jamal Warner also
true.
Lost this week. Not the type of star that we have in Hulk and Ozzy, but an argument could be made. The Cosby Show may have contended with the fame of those two guys during a time, and Bill Cosby obviously has changed that star a little bit. It's a little dimmer considering his sexual assault history. But regarding the Hulk and Ozzy, I can remember being a kid and being afraid of Ozzy Osbourne. That video would come on MTV and I'd have to shut it off. And the Hulk, if you told me at a time that Hulk Hogan was going to be the president of the universe, I would have voted for him, Coach. This guy, 27-inch pythons, WrestleMania 1, 2, and I believe 3 were still legitimate. A guy that was bigger than life. I do remember the transition when Ozzy's music stopped scaring me, and I began to enjoy it. War Pigs, amazing song, Black Sabbath, and then Ozzy, and then we get into the 90s. We get into the Osbournes. We see a whole new light of this artistic genius. I don't know. Got into a conversation with some jabronis I grew up in the last couple of days. Who was more famous, Ozzy Osbourne or Hulk Hogan? It's a difficult question to answer right there.
It is, and then we're going to weigh in on that question in a minute. I think when I think of the two of them, it's very interesting because they both played a role. Ozzy was the Prince of Darkness, biting off the bat's head and creating this image of himself almost as a satanic figure. And then you got Hulkamania, I am a real American, waving the flag, playing the patriot, trying to bring America back in the 80s after the dark decades of the 60s and 70s when American patriotism was maybe at its lowest. And now here he was encouraging all the young kids to take their vitamins. Hulk was gobbling steroids, like they were Flintstones vitamins, but
allegedly
may have contributed to his early demise at the age of 71. But he played this role, and he played it wonderfully. And so did Ozzy, man. And it's interesting. You asked the question, who was more famous? They couldn't have been any different in what they were presenting. but they were both phenomenal characters. That's what I see them as. You know, they were both individuals who put on a brilliant show. And those shows were very, very different, but they were both so brilliant at it.
Well, you know, in entertainment content was less in those days. I read a great article about a year ago. People's favorite music tends to be the period of their life that was the happiest and most fun. And the period of Ozzy and Hulk had to be the most fun for us, right? The 80s was the beginning of the team sports generation, which our generation probably the first people to experience this. It was the beginning of MTV, beginning of kind of cable television being mainstream, and Hulk Hogan dominated and Ozzy Osbourne dominated in both of these fields and all those fields. I can remember WrestleMania being the most exciting thing I've ever seen, where you weren't watching videos, you weren't watching YouTube, you couldn't watch repeats. You had to watch this stuff live. When a new Ozzy song came out or video on MTV, we got to the TV, whatever it was, 4, 10 o'clock, MTV announced it was putting it on. Those were exciting things. The excitement had a lot to do with it, which, you know, people today don't have. There's no urgency to watch anything. I got buddies that, you know, the six-string punter from JMU that we talk about a lot, our golf guru, that guy, he starts the Eagles game a half hour late so he doesn't have to watch commercials, and he shuts the phone off. This guy's living it. He's living it back to the future. He's taking the time machine. I like the urgency. There was a group effort. You had to pay to get WrestleMania, so, you know, everybody threw in $5. Your mom bought the pay-per-view, and those are things I don't think we have anymore. But at the end of the day, I think Ozzy may have been the most famous guy. I did some research. Over 100 million albums, Coach. That means worldwide 100 million. I don't know if the Hulkster sold 100 million tickets. Maybe he did. You know, and this is an interesting conversation. I'm not taking anything away from the Hulkster. I mean, he took down the Iron Sheik in Iran in the 1980s with one single blow. Famous fights with the Ultimate Warrior and with Randy Savage. And I don't know, a guy, I didn't know this, but had a resurgence in wrestling. I don't know if, you know, I quit watching once I figured out it was kind of fake, Coach, but a lot of people continue with it. I think in the late 90s, he had a resurgence and then had sex with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife on camera, Coach, and I think Bubba leaked it. So I don't know if that was good or bad, but at the end of the day, both iconic guys that we're never going to have two guys like that again.
You know what's interesting about both those guys, too? You think about it. Black Sabbath. I mean, some people sometimes say Led Zeppelin's the first heavy metal band, but I've always thought Led Zeppelin's kind of their own thing. I mean, Black Sabbath is really kind of the first, for me anyway, heavy metal band that transcends into the mainstream. That you know, heavy metal was like this fringe, angry, dark form of art that a lot of people around the world saw as this alternative lifestyle. It was like you said before, it was scary. But Ozzy brought it into the mainstream. And the same thing with wrestling. Wrestling was like this clown show for, you know, like people who wanted to subscribe to some kind of weird male fantasy, you know, where these wrestlers all beat each other up, etc. But Hulk Hogan brought it into the mainstream. Like regular people actually started to pay attention. It's hard to do that. It's hard to take a fringe thing and make it widely popular. And both of those guys did it. But I think you're right. For global appeal, Ozzy, I think, is obviously the bigger name. As far as in America is concerned, I think what Hulk Hogan did for the country in the 80s is very, very memorable. But then you're right, man. He had a heel turn. He turned into a bad guy. And then he got into some, you know, stuff in his private life that was ugly and et cetera. So, all right, let me ask you this question. Now, we are seeing all these icons of our youth, for Gen Xers, the icons of the 80s. I mean, they're dropping right and left. Swayze's gone, Michael Jackson's gone, Prince is gone. Now you got the Hulkster, Ozzy, etc. Who's left? Who's the biggest living icon of the 80s, in your opinion?
Well, and I reference this group of jabronis who you know I've grown up with, Coach. They came from an area of Echo, Waterford, which is a kind of a middle class, kind of blue collar, primarily Catholic, Italian, Irish, Polish kind of neighborhood who kind of bridged between urban and country boys. So they always had contraband, Coach. So I remember a Ozzy Osbourne illegal bootleg video that I'd see at my buddy's house in Waterford, where everybody would spit in a bucket and they would drink it. So, a disgusting thing that I never was able to get out of my head. So, when I talk to these guys, I think they have a little bit of a pulse on the country in this conversation. We got into another debate. Who is the last remaining greatest icon from the 80s? Would it be Clint Eastwood or Sylvester Stallone? Both of which I think maybe even bigger stars than Ozzy and Hulk Hogan, and probably were. A tough decision. Having reviewed all of them and lived through, my childhood and my life watching Clint and Sylvester Stallone, I'm gonna have to say Rocky Balboa and Rambo bigger than Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry and Outlaw Josie Wells, whatever the hell that guy was playing. I'm gonna say Sylvester Stallone, greatest surviving 80s superstar icon, whatever you want to call him.
Interesting. Yeah, because he really was at his peak in the 80s. He makes it in Rocky 1976 and Rocky 2 late 70s, but in the 80s he blows up with all the Rambo franchise and obviously the continuation of the Rocky series and those types of things. Clint Eastwood, his movies really go back to the 60s. So I think his heyday was probably 60s and 70s. So I agree with you. Stallone, yeah, when Stallone passes, that's going to be a big deal. I'll tell you what, Fringe, we talk about fringe individuals, but he's nowhere near on the level of Stallone as a celebrity. But if you just want to root a guy in his time period and just say, like, this dude in the 80s was massive, Mr. T. Mr. T in the 80s, I think it's hard for people who did not grow up then to understand why and how Mr. T, whether it be Rocky 3 or the A-Team, or even just like the commercials he did, the I Pity the Fool and all that stuff, he was just like a man for his time. Like the dude in the beginning of Big Lebowski, they say he was a man for his time. Well, Mr. T was a man of the 80s for sure.
Well, you've brought us full circle, Coach. I mean, B.A. Baracus, also, from the A-Team, Mr. T, Rocky Balboa, and Hulk Hogan all appeared in the same movie, I believe, in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
I believe all three star in that movie, which is probably about 1983, maybe 84. The death of Apollo Creed, which was still shocking to me. I still cry when I see that movie. But what's interesting, and I don't know if we're ever going to have this situation again, what we're talking about here in the 80s, our greatest stars were not athletes. At this time, sports was huge. The NFL was big, the NBA was big, baseball was big. But I don't think as big as music, TV, or movie stars were. I don't think it was even a competition. Though we watched these sports and we loved them, I think the bigger stars were from that medium of entertainment. I think today, especially you watch the Major League Baseball All-Star Game with this ridiculous red carpet. I don't know what the hell happened on the finishing. We had some home run derby to end the game. But the sports stars have taken over celebrity, right? And now they're the ones walking around with the attractive ladies. They're the ones with Livy Dunn, Taylor Swift. The league is using kind of marketing techniques that we used to see in movies and TV. And I don't know what direction that means sports is going to go in. I hope it continues to be a legitimate one. But when you throw in that type of fame and you throw in gambling, I think there's a concern of losing legitimacy of sports in general, especially all the scandals of guys getting caught gambling and fixing pitches, strikes, whatever, NBA and baseball. I fear we're going to see that in the NFL, but I don't think it's going to happen, Coach. I still have faith the NFL will continue to be the greatest sports league in the world. I still have faith.
It's a great point. When Michael Jordan emerged as this global icon, the attention that sports figures began to get really sort of shifted, and it combined with like the diminishing of MTV as a cultural icon as they moved more and more into sort of quote unquote reality TV and less into like promoting music. And then eventually music moved online, and now suddenly you had access to whatever you wanted, and it diminished your reliance upon other mediums to bring you the entertainment figures that were popular. And obviously we've seen movies decline. There's just so many entertainment options now that the Hollywood star or the music industry star is not what it once was when we were growing up. And you're right, the athlete has sort of taken center stage in that regard.
I mean, not to bring up another sociopathic murderer, but O.J. Simpson, a
Yeah.
guy who, one of the greatest athletes of our lives, one of the greatest NFL players, didn't come close to the fame he achieved once he got into movies and mainstream media. And, I wonder, are we going back in that direction? Hulk Hogan had a couple movies. They weren't great, had a couple. And, at the time we discussed, was professional wrestling a sport? That used to be debated. My brother and a friend of his were recruited to try out for some sort of training school to be professional wrestlers. And I think my brother was more the tag along. His buddy was about 6'5" and a state champion shot put guy. They kind of wanted him, but they wanted him to play some sort of stereotypical insulting type of character based on his race, and he decided not to. But at the end of the day, I hope sports can keep its legitimacy. I had a conversation with Jeff Harbin about this week. I think higher salaries protect sports from going to cheating or illegitimate kind of behavior. I like bigger salaries. Bigger salaries tells me more honest guys. They're not going to take the bait to gamble, to cheat, to do whatever it is. Gilgeous Alexander making $71 million a year. This guy ain't missing free throws so his buddy can win $5,000 on a bet on a Tuesday night, right? This guy's not going to forfeit that. So I love when the players get paid, and I love everything that the NFL is doing to protect that league, and I hope it continues.
Interesting. All right, let's transition the conversation to something also a little bit, in some ways, dark and in some ways absurd. Two of the most cursed franchises in all of professional sports had moments in the last couple of days that are typically them. The New York Jets, who 2 years ago made a big splash when they landed Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, only to lose him for the season on the fourth play of their 2023 season, ushering in a miserable 2-year run with Aaron Rodgers, which was total Jets. Their new quarterback, Justin Fields, on the very, very first day of training camp, had to leave the practice field in a cart after dislocating his toe. Now, it's not going to be a season-ending injury, but it just seemed to be total Jets. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong for the Jets. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Browns, another fairly cursed franchise throughout sports history, unveiled an alternate helmet. And they worked up something where it had a blow-up helmet out on a barge. I think it was in Lake Erie or a river. I don't know where they were, some body of water. And it was a big production, and they unveiled it, and they had a cameraman there filming it, and the cameraman literally fell off the barge into the water while filming it. I mean, you could not get any more quintessential Browns than that. And so, in light of these rather embarrassing moments for two franchises, the Jets and the Browns, that have suffered through a lot of embarrassing moments in their histories, give for me some of what you believe to be the most cursed franchises in the American sporting landscape.
I mean, this is it's always a tough question, Coach, because at the end of the day, I still think Cleveland and I still think the Jets have a good season. We used to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles having this curse. Until you win a championship, I think it's a difficult thing to say you're not cursed. Boston Red Sox, Manny and Big Papi had to juice up some steroids, come back against the Yankees and win a World Series. I wonder, a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who now have, arguably the best pitcher in the last 20 years to come out of college, and the Skeens boy, and there's already rumors they're trading them. I wonder, can teams now get over a curse? Because it's a financial thing, right? If you're going to have a Skeens and you're going to pay him $50-60 million a year, you got to pay a handful of other guys $50-60 million a year to get over that hump. Jets, the same situation in Cleveland. Jets struggle to kind of get the fame that the Giants have. I wonder, can these teams, and the wonder isn't do they have the money, it's do they have the motivation, right? You can be a team that doesn't win a championship anymore and still be a multi-billion-dollar owner of a franchise, right? You don't have to win a championship to be worth billions of dollars. So I wonder, are teams going to go all in like the Eagles did last year, like the Steelers are clearly doing and are saying it, right? We are going all in. They paid Watt and said, why? We're gonna win a championship this year. So I think until a team does that, they're cursing themselves, right? It's sabotage. Justin Fields, I like a lot. I think he's a good player. He's an upgrade, but he is not an Aaron Rodgers. He's not a Jalen Hurts. He's not a guy that's going to win a Super Bowl. Cleveland Browns, neither of the guys they picked and neither of the veterans that they have in camp at quarterback are going to win a Super Bowl. So I don't know if it's a curse as much as a sabotage anymore. And to me, that maybe there's some things we can talk about how to correct that. Maybe relegation from major leagues like we have in Premier Soccer. You finish in the bottom three, maybe 2 years in a row, you're out, coach, right? Let's develop a farm league for the NFL. You go down to the farm leagues, and then we'll see what happens and kind of change motivation and urgency with these owners.
Relegation is a fascinating so that's definitely going to be a
It's
conversation
fantastic.
on the hot route at some point. I think picture this scenario, Pez. Let's go back to 1969. It's 1969. America's in a weird spot, right? You got a lot of social change. You got a Vietnam War. You got a lot of people that are unhappy. People experimenting with different lifestyles, different marital arrangements. Rolling Stones come out with a very famous song called Sympathy for the Devil. Here's my prediction, Pez. In 1969, Joe Namath, quarterback of the New York Jets, summons up some of that black magic, makes a deal with the devil, win us a Super Bowl, and then let me, for the next 50 years of my life, run around and sleep with as many women as I possibly can and be a playboy, et cetera, right? And you can curse the Jets franchise forever after that. I can see that happening. Joe Namath, deal with the devil. They win Super Bowl III, forever cursed after that.
Guy ate hot dogs at halftime and smoked cigarettes on the bench, coach.
He did.
I say we need to get back to that. There's too much of this metrics and analytics. If you are a ball player, you're a ball player, right? I think Namath, if he was a young guy coming out, I think he still plays in this league. He had the moxie, he had the arm, and you got to be a badass to be an NFL quarterback. You can't go out there and be scared. You can't be hesitant. You got to be a gunslinger. Going back to Clint Eastwood in these 80s references here, you got to be a badass. And I don't know. I think it's tough to find Joe Namath. It's tough to find a Jalen Hurts who, insultingly, whatever this group of morons was, ranked him the 9th best quarterback in the league. To be an NFL quarterback today, you're going to struggle to just be a pocket passer. You got to move. You got to run. You got to take hits. It's a new type of hybrid league. And unless you're Aaron Rodgers and you were born with an arm that maybe 5 people in the world have ever had, I don't think pocket passers are around anymore. So I love the Joe Namath comparison. There's maybe been, 5 of them in history like him? Terry Bradshaw, I'm going to throw in a Joe Namath type of situation where they were better than their athleticism because they were badass dudes and winners. And it's tough to find, right? If it was easy to find, people be winning championships all the time. Tom Brady, a badass winner. Regardless of how pretty he is or what the hell he's doing in his private life, that dude is a badass. He stares down tension, never feared. The most famous Joe Montana story, they're about to go down and win a winning drive in a Super Bowl, and in the huddle, everybody's about to piss their pants, and he looks at the guys and goes, "Hey, look, it's John Candy." The guy said they couldn't believe it, right? The famous story about some of these astronauts who, when they would take off in the space shuttle, their heart rate wouldn't go up, right? These are the kind of guys that, have the right stuff. And I think they're far and few in sports. And that's why the NFL, it's a fantastic league. You get 17 games. The pressure's on every game. It's not 162 games or 81 in the NBA. You get 17 to go in the show. And if you don't perform, you're going to be out, right? And that at the end of the day is the name of the game. And that's why it's still the best league in the world.
And it is incredible. Think back to that Super Bowl III. The Jets were 18-point underdogs. And Joe Namath stood in front of all the assembled media and said, "We're going to win. We're going to win." Can you imagine that today? The way the media coverage is, and oh my gosh, they would kill him for it. But he delivered the W. I mean, it's either the greatest upset in sports history or it's a deal with the devil. And I'm 50-50 on which one it was.
Which stadium is the moron that set that 18-point line buried under, Coach? Because at this time, it was still an illegal situation gambling. Whoever set that 18-point line is drowning in concrete still. It's got to be. That had to cost the books tons and tons of money, especially New York market. Everybody was betting the Jets. They had to be betting the Jets.
Yeah, thank God it's not sports gambling wasn't back then what it is today. I'll give you a team though. Like when we talk about cursed franchises, this is a team that has had a lot of success over the last 30 years, but ultimately has delivered just gut punch losses for its fan base, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Can you imagine as an Eagles fan if the Eagles had made it to the Super Bowl 4 straight years? and then lost every one. And each one they lost in more humiliating fashion than the first one, right? Buffalo makes 4 straight Super Bowls in the early 90s, and they lose the first one with a chance to win it on the last play of the game, and their kicker misses the field goal. And then they lose the next one by like 17 points, and they lose the third one by like 30, and they lose the last one by like 40 points. I mean, it got progressively worse. And then they go into the darkness for like 20 years and they stink. But then they come back under Josh Allen, and now they've been tremendously competitive again. And yet they've got Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in front of them. They've lost to them 4 out of the last 6 postseasons. They can't get past that Patrick Mahomes hurdle. It just feels like being a Buffalo Bills fan is an act of torture.
Well, and it's a puzzling situation in Buffalo. I agree with everything you just said. And if they were to go all in to win a Super Bowl, like the Philadelphia Eagles did last year and the Steelers are doing this year, you got to make moves to help your quarterback. Quarterback, we have no complaints. Josh Allen, he's in the last 20 years, he's got to be a top 3 guy. A guy does remarkable things with his legs, with his arm, a pressure guy. James Cook, solid running back. But then you get into their wide receiver core. Shocks me. They didn't go out and do what the Steelers did. Get a Metcalf. They didn't do what the Cowboys did to go and get some, crazy guy, but can still make catches. I don't know if you can win a Super Bowl with Shakur, Coleman, Palmer. I mean, some of these guys, I don't even know who these guys are. One touchdown catch for their third wide receiver last year. There were dudes out there, and I think there's still a couple vets out there that could help them. I feel bad for Josh Allen. So I don't know if they're cursed as much as maybe they're afraid to really pull the trigger. I mean, the Steelers have ripped the Band-Aid off. This is they're saying it. We're throwing the grenade. That's it. We're going over the wall. This is a one-and-done team to win a Super Bowl. We're selling out for the next probably 5 years, and we're going for it. And I think you have to do that. You have to be willing, like they say in the 80s movie, you got to be willing to die to be a hero, right? And I don't know if the Bills have done that. I feel bad for Josh Allen, and I think this window's closing on him, and it's why I'm supporting the Steelers. Pez's picks did not take a play on the Buffalo Bills because we have some rules. We don't bet against gunslinging quarterbacks, Coach. We try not to. To bet against Josh Allen, I think, is stupid. But to take them, and I believe they were about 10.5, 11.5 games to win this year, their total, I think that's going to be a stretch with that wide receiver core. At the end of the day, someone's going to have to help that guy out, and someone's going to have to make big catches. I don't know who on that roster is going to do it.
Yeah, it's a good point. At what point are you, you're dipping your toe in, but at what point are you just like, screw it, man, I'm going to run in and I'm just going to take a big cannonball. I'm just going to take my big dive in and see what comes of it. But
got to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Pez, great conversation. As always, what's going on over there at Pez's Picks?
Well, Pez's Picks, we've got some NFL and some college totals. College totals, Coach, is that's like playing roulette at the casino. It's fun, but it's risky. So we put out with Nebraska. We're taking 7.5, taking the over. We're banking a lot on Matt Rule, year 3. Year 3 college coaches, when they're good, tend to make big gains. And Dylan Raiola, their quarterback, true freshman last year, 6'4", 245, Coach. This dude. I love a 6'4", 245 quarterback. I know in Pittsburgh you guys do with that Big Ben guy. I love that team, and we'll be coming at you with those. If you're our age, what I suggest to do, watch an 80s movie, Coach. I got my son here and his surf buddy up in Vermont. We're watching 80s movies all week. I assigned them a movie. It's a fantastic thing to do. I don't know if it was 80s. I know what you did last summer. We screened this week, and the kids thought it was stupid, which is great. It's great to watch an 80s horror movie and have the 12-year-olds looking at it and go, you were afraid of this? So fantastic to do. I suggest get on that. And I don't know, what do we got, 40 days till opening game? I can't wait for those Philadelphia Eagles to smoke those Dallas Cockroaches. I can't wait, Coach. I can't wait.
Yeah, can't wait for football season. All right, as always, excellent conversation with at Pez's Picks here. Join me on Monday for my Call Sheet Daily. I got a great guest on Monday. I will be on Monday visiting with longtime NBA coach Jim O'Brien, former head coach of the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Indiana Pacers. Guys coached icons such as Patrick Ewing, Paul Pierce, Allen Iverson. And Jim O'Brien and I are going to talk about coaching player development, coaching superstars, coaching philosophy. So, I'm a football-based podcast, but man, have an opportunity to sit down and talk with a guy who's coached in the NBA for 25 years. I'm darn well going to do it. That'll be a great conversation on Monday with Jim O'Brien. Until then, hope everybody has a great weekend. For Pez's Picks, this is Kevin Smith. Take care, everybody.